So we're going to start today by working on this Surfshop logo, and you're going to take a bitmap, turn it into a vector graphic, and make that the central piece of a logo that you create using all the tools you've learned in Illustrator. So get yourself a new document, go to File, New, and if you don't see letter as an option right here, then it's going to be right under Print. Pick a letter page, that's going to be 8.5 by 11. That becomes important later. The first thing we do is we get our picture. So you go to File and Place, and you're going to get the picture of the surfer. I put him on my website for you. When you do select File and Place, the surfer doesn't go right on the page. Actually, your mouse becomes this kind of floating thing where wherever you click, the surfer will go. Don't click and drag, just click and let go, and that'll drop it exactly true to size in the middle of your page. The next thing I want to do is I want to get some rulers because I'd like to center everything. I want to center everything along one line right down the middle of this page. And since it's 8.5 by 11, I'm going to find 4.25 and I'm going to center it using inches. So when I go to View, I can pull it down to Rulers and Show Rulers. And if you don't see the form of measurement, it's right up here. These numbers are very small. You can right click right on the numbers and see right now it's measuring in points. Points, pecas, inches, millimeters, centimeters, pixels. I'm choosing inches because for me that's easy. Now you look, you see that there are 612 points, and you can divide that in half if that makes you happy, but I just switch it to inches because that's how I think about measuring. So inches, and I'm going to find 4.5 inches. So there's 4.25 inches. So there's 4.25 right there at this spot. I'd like to put a guideline there for myself for the rest of this project. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over here to the left, and you see this ruler. I'm going to click just right where the numbers are and drag out. And you see when you do click and drag out, it brings you a guideline. And I can drop that guideline at 4.25. And if I printed this or saved it anywhere, that guideline would be invisible. But while I'm designing, it's very useful. So my black arrow, the selection tool, I can center this guy up on the guideline. This little dot needs to move over just a little bit. You can do that with the arrow keys or your mouse, it doesn't matter. Next, I'd like to trace him because he is a raster or a bitmap. And if I zoom in, you can see all the pixelation. Not great. We're going to turn him into a more logo-friendly piece of art. So the tracing is going to happen in the Properties panel. If you look, it says Quick Actions here. One of them is Image Trace. Remember, Image Trace has a lot of options, and in this case, I'd like it to be a sort of black and white thing that I'm going to turn colored later. So I'm going to find Shades of Gray. Shades of Gray is the perfect thing for this. And there he is. Next, I need to expand it so I can see all my anchor points. So click the Expand button. And finally, I need to take and switch arrows here. Switch to the little direct selection, which is the lighter colored arrow, and individually manipulate parts of this. I'm going to show you real quick why I have to do the next thing. See the white background? I'm going to get rid of that because I'm going to draw some circles like behind it. I have a circle. That won't work without that white background gone. So taking the lighter color arrow, the direct selection tool, I need to click away from the picture because right now every single thing is selected. So click away and then click right between the palm trees and hit delete or backspace. Now, if you look again, you can see that white background's gone. But I also want to get this background that's between his between his legs right there. I got to get that white out of there too. So let me use my white arrow again. I'm going to use that. Click off to the side to deselect everything. Click on the white space between his calves and delete it. Now I think this is going to work pretty well. The next thing I want to do is find my eraser tool. The eraser tool is right here. And I'm going to cut off sort of the edges of the beach, I guess, underneath the palm trees. You look at this finished one I have here, sort of comes out a little bit from the palm trees, maybe an inch if you're looking at the measurement at the top of the page. And I'm going to come over and cut this off to look similar. So I'm just going to draw a line like that and erase the rest of this. There are other ways to do this. I'm showing you what I think is the easiest way. Next, if this isn't already grouped, we're going to group it. So click on my surfer, go to Object, and if it says group right there and you can click it, go for it. If it doesn't, then look in the layers. You probably already have it grouped. That's fine. As long as it's grouped, we're good. We're going to make a copy of it. So, easiest way to do that, there's a couple ways. You can do edit copy, edit paste. See, I have two of them now. Or you can actually just put your finger on the Alt key and just click right on one of the pieces of the picture. It doesn't, not in the white space, but the picture, and drag, and you get a second one. Either way you do it is fine. What you're going to do is make sure you've got the top one selected, because the next piece we do is going to require us to use the top one of these two things. So I've got them stacked on top of each other, and you can see in your layers panel there are definitely two groups. We're going to find the Pathfinder panel. That's the next thing we locate. So if you go to Window and pull it down to Pathfinder, that's going to be the thing we used to separate out those shapes when we made the hearts that interlocked. Now we're going to use it to join together some shapes. And I've got my top surfer selected. My bottom surfer is not selected. I'm going to click right here on this button that unites things. When you unite it, all the color is going to become one color. Ta-da! A gray surfer man. Very exciting. If I hide this layer, though, you'll see there's another one behind him. Now my gray surfer man gets to have color. So I'm going to go to Properties here. Let me move my Pathfinder window out of the way. And pull Fill down and give him a nice orangey glowy color. Very exciting. The next piece I'm going to use is going to be a tool that puts sort of an overlay effect. Remember, we've done something like an overlay in Photoshop. This is just going to be the Illustrator version of that exact same thing. So if you go to Window and find the box that says Transparency, that's it right there. We're going to change Normal to either Darken or Multiply, and for this one I'm going to choose Multiply. The original lesson I had said something different, but I find that this looks much, much better. So we're sticking with Multiply. And so far, so good. It's very cool looking. Now, if you look at my example, the next thing we should be working on is this big circle in the background. There are no hard and fast measurements that I have for that, so we're just going to go draw the ellipse tool here. Here's the ellipse tool. And you can set up your stroke and fill. I'm going to keep the fill the same color, the one I just used. And if you would like, there is a neat little trick. You click right in the center and hold down Alt and Shift. It'll actually draw a perfect circle out from the middle. If you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. You can hold down Shift and just grab from the corner down. It's cool. But Alt and Shift out from the middle it's a pretty neat trick. Either way, whatever pleases you. This is, again, a moment where I want to make sure I've got things centered correctly. So there, I know that I'm super close. There it is. And I'm going to have two of these circles, too, because one is going to have a gradient that I'm going to put the same overlay effect. So if you look at my layers, I've got two groups. I've got my guide. That's just a little invisible line I have. And then I've got this ellipse. You can duplicate that any number of ways. But for my money, the easiest way to get an exact copy in the exact same place, actually, is to drag this down to the Copy Layer button. You can do it that way. You can add an Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste. You can take your Alt key and drag it out. Either way, you get an extra. You just need them to line up. That's all. They need to be exactly stacked on top of one another. Perfectly. Because we're going to go to Properties and change the fill to this radial gradient. The radial gradient just means a gradient that starts one color, and as it goes out in a circle, it gets to be a different color. Very exciting. So there's my radial gradient, but I don't want it that way. I'd like to change the transparency. There it is again, transparency to multiply. It's pretty slick looking. Finally, in layers, I'm going to move these circles down below in the layers, my surfer man. So if you grab this ellipse and move it, you can see whenever I get it between two layers, there's a blue line. You need to be able to see that blue line. If you don't see that blue line, it won't move. Pull it down too far, it tells you no. See the blue line, it moves. Pull this down. Should be in that order. The very bottom is the colored ellipse. Then above that is the overlay. Then there's the surfer with the shades of gray, and then there's the surfer with the overlay. Frankly, it doesn't matter where your guide is. Okay, so we're almost there. We got to put the rounded rectangle at the bottom, and we got to put the name on the rounded rectangle at the bottom. So to get the rounded rectangle correct, first of all, we need to find it. It's hiding under the ellipse tool. Right there, the rounded rectangle tool. And I'm just going to do something that I rarely do. I'm going to click and let go, and I'm going to use some precise measurements. Not really my normal move, but let's do it. Click and let go. I'm going to make this thing, oh my goodness, it's measuring in inches. Hang on. Actually, let's just go with it. It says 6.25 inches by 1.388. Okay, let's do 6 1/4, and let's change that to 2 because that sounds like a pain in the butt. And let's change the corner radius to 0.5. What we're doing with this corner radius is we're actually deciding how rounded the corners are going to be. That's all it's telling you there. Is it super rounded corners? Does it almost look like an ellipse? Or are the corners just barely rounded off? So this ought to do the trick. You click OK. It's a pretty decent rectangle. If you don't like the size of that, you can actually change it just by dragging the handles. It's fine with me. Now it's stuck with that gradient. I'm going to change that gradient to that orange color I've been using. And if you wanted to put another gradient piece together there, you could actually duplicate it. Same way you duplicate anything. Do that overlay trick again. That's fine. You can do that. It doesn't hurt my feelings one little bit. Same overlay trick as you did before. Go for it. Doesn't matter to me as long as you take the type tool and you pick a really cool font. And by the way, the really cool fonts are under Window, Type, Character, right there. In this one, in the original lesson, the person who wrote the lesson had me using something, I think it was called Poplar. Oh, look, it was that one. Whatever. That's a good one. And then you're going to write your name of your surf shop. Ooh, actually, it looks better in all caps with this font. If you highlight that, you can bring the size up one little bit at a time. Put this right into your window. Maybe give it a stroke color. Let me give it a stroke color with the eyedropper tool. Oh my gosh. So, stroke color it is. When you get it all done, should be able to show it to me. I'm sure it's going to be brilliant. You can move that guideline out of the way if you wish. And I'm also going to want to make sure you save it the correct way. So when you go to File, Save As, it's going to ask you if you'd like to save it as an Illustrator file. You're going to do that, but you're also going to save it as an SVG. That's going to be a scalable vector graphic. And an SVG, or scalable vector graphic, is going to save it so that you can open it without the benefit of having Illustrator. So if you try to show this to somebody who doesn't have the entire Adobe Creative Suite, you can save it as an SVG, and it keeps the properties of the vector graphic. It doesn't get pixelated. You can stretch it out big enough to put it on a billboard, and it's still not going to get pixelated. So save it both directions, show it to me, and that's it. Surf's up, guys.